Okay, today we talk about the order of operations. And most people know this. It's very commonly referred to as, please excuse my dear Aunt Sally. But what it stands for is parentheses. Okay. But really this is any grouping symbol. So for example, one that we're really familiar with is in a fraction. You would do the numerator and then do the denominator. Okay. Another grouping symbol that we'll see is the square root. You would want to work under the square root. Okay. There can also be brackets. Okay. Those are the same as parentheses. After you've worked within your parentheses or your grouping symbols, then you want to deal with the exponents. Okay. So notice this is not left to right. Okay. We start with parentheses or your grouping symbols, then the exponents. Then we can do the multiplication or division. This we will do left to right, okay, as they come. Finally, we'll end with the addition or subtraction, and this we will do left to right. Okay. But in general, we do not work left to right. We start parentheses, then exponents, then multiplication and division, then addition or subtraction. Okay. So let me rewrite this so we can all see. This is negative 18 divided by 2 times 3. So let's work the order of operations. First it says we'll deal with the parentheses. So here's our parentheses, and inside this parentheses everything is simplified, so we'll move on. Then the exponents, there are no exponents. Multiplication or division, left to right. So I have both a division and a multiplication. First I will do the division because it is to the left. So negative 18 divided by positive 2 is negative 9. Then the multiplied by 3. And then we can multiply, which is negative 27. Okay. So this one's the tricky one. Division and multiplication, do it left to right. Here, again, we're not going to start with the addition. We want to start with parentheses. So inside our parentheses, everything else will copy. 2 plus 6 times. And inside the parentheses, 4 minus 7 is negative 3. Then we begin again. There are no exponents. Next we do the multiplication. So we do not do this addition. We want to do the multiplication. So we'll take 2, and now we have to determine positive 6. So plus 6 is positive 6 times a negative 3. Well, 6 times 3 is 18. A positive and a negative become negative. And lastly, we can do the addition or subtraction. In this case, the subtraction. So, if you're doing negatives by hand, you subtract as normal. 18 minus 2 is 16. But then to determine the sign, you look at the sign of the larger number. So 2 is bigger than 18. 18 is negative, so our answer will be negative. And that trick will always work for you. Okay. So now let's try and see what we have. Here we have a multiplication, then a subtraction, then some more multiplication, but inside of here we have some parentheses that need to be simplified first. So let's deal with them. 7 minus 9. Everything else will copy. 5 times negative 4 minus negative 2 times, well, 7 minus 9 is also negative 2. we can do that same trick. 9 minus 7 is 2, but the 9 is negative, so we make this negative. Okay. Now we still have multiplication, a subtraction, and a multiplication. There are no exponents, so we can move on to the multiplication and division. We'll do these left to right as they come. So 5 times negative 4 is negative 20. The subtraction will come down. And here, negative 2 times negative 2, well, 2 times 2 is 4. Negative and negative become positive. So this becomes negative 20 subtracting 4. So on our number line, if here's 0, I'm going down some distance, negative 20, and then I want to subtract off 4 more again. So I become more negative. So this is negative 24. Let's look at D. And here we have multiple sets. We have an inside parenthesis. This parenthesis is simplified inside, but we also have the bracket. So let's work innermost first and do the 5 minus 8. Everything else we will just copy. Minus 6, bracket 6 minus 4. Now, 5 minus 8 is negative 3. Now we still have to work inside our grouping symbols. We have this bracket. So we'll ignore everything else and just copy it. 4 times negative 3 squared minus 6 times. Now inside the bracket we follow the order operations again. Okay? We've done the parentheses. There are no exponents. So we now move to multiplication or division. Okay? You don't do the 6 minus 4. We'll deal with the negative 4 times negative 3. So the 6 is still there. So a negative 4 times a negative 3, 4 and 3 is 12. Negative and negative become positive. That's plus. We still have to work inside this bracket because it's not been simplified, so we'll copy the rest. Now we can say inside of here, 6 plus 12 is 18. Now we finally finished working inside the grouping symbols. Inside here is simplified and inside here is simplified. So next we move on to the exponents. So for that, the next thing we'll change is this negative 3 squared. The 4 still stays multiplied by it. Now remember that negative 3 squared means take negative 3 and multiply it by negative 3. 3 times 3 is 9, and a negative become positive. Minus 6 times 18, just copying. Now we can do the multiplication or division left to right. So this will change to 4 times 9 is 36. The subtraction, or you can say negative 6 times 18. I don't know how to do that off the top of my head, so I'll do it by hand. 18 and 6 is 40, I'm sorry, 6 and 8 are 48. So I put down the 8 and carry the 4. Then I start again. 6 times 1 is 6, plus 4 is 10. Okay. And then it's the subtraction, and so it's negative. So we have 108 minus 36. Again, to deal with the negative, I'll take 108 and subtract as normal, 36. 8 minus 6 is 2. 10 minus 3 is 7. I take the sign of the larger number, which was 108, so this is negative 72. Now notice how similar these next two examples are. However, this one's a multiplication, and this one has a subtraction in between the multiplication. So we'll see how these look differently. The first thing we will deal with, since the parentheses are simplified, is the exponent. So negative 3 halves times, and remember negative 1/2 times negative 1/2. Negative and negative become positive. And then 1 times 1 is 1. 2 times 2 is 4. Now that the exponents are done, I can do the multiplication. There is no canceling to do, so I can multiply straight across. So this is negative 3/8. So notice how the answer is different from negative 3 halves subtract. Now, negative 1/2 squared stays the same, so I'm subtracting 1/4. Which, if you want, you can remove those parentheses to make it subtract 1/4. Now I'm trying to subtract fractions. I cannot just go straight across. I need to get a common denominator, which is 4. So this is equal to negative 6 over 4 minus 1 over 4. Which, if you get the common denominator, write it as one big fraction. It's minus 6 minus 1. So for this, I start at 0, come down to negative 6, and then I subtract 1 more, so I become more negative. So this is negative 7/4. Okay. Now let's also do some evaluating. Okay. So let's say we have 3 variables, x, y, and z, and we've defined x. They're telling us that x is equal to 2, that y is equal to negative 9, and that z, you'll probably want to start crossing your z's, because z's will start looking like negative 2's, or I'm sorry, positive 2's pretty soon. Okay. So what we do, here's an expression. We want to substitute these values in. So this is the same thing as negative 3 times x, but x, we've been told, is 2. So I substitute the value of 2 in. Then I copy the rest, plus 2 times y, but we've been told y is equal to negative 9. Now I can simplify this using the order of operations. So negative 3 times positive 2 is negative 6, plus, if you want to just take it, 2 times negative 9 is negative 18. And then here we want to simplify our signs. If we want to add a negative, that's the same thing as subtracting. You can think there's a positive 1 here, so a positive 1 times a negative 18 is negative 18. And this becomes even more negative, negative 24. Now in the next one I want to be careful and point this out to you. There's a negative x, and the x is the only thing that's being squared, not the negative. If the negative was to be squared as well, it would look like that. Okay, so we'll have to be careful here. Then we're going to subtract 2y. Alright, let's substitute in. So that negative you can think as negative 1. Then I want to take x and square it. But we were given x to be equal to 2. Then minus 2 times y, and we're given y as negative 9. Now let's simplify. So the negative 1 stays. 2 squared becomes 4. And you can think about this either way. Negative 2 times negative 9 is a positive 18. So this is equal to negative 4 plus 18 which is positive 14. In the next example, we're going to take x and cube it, that is, multiply it by itself 3 times. X is given as 2. Then we're going to multiply by y, which we're given as negative 9. And then we'll multiply by z to the 4th power. And z is given as negative 1. Okay, now let's start simplifying. Well, 2 cubed means 2 times 2, which is 4, times 2, which is 8. So this becomes 8 times negative 9. And then negative 1 to the 4th power. Now in this case, notice that the negative is being included to the power. So this is negative 1 times negative 1, which is positive 1, times negative 1, which is negative 1, times another positive 1, makes it a positive 1. And now we can multiply. Positive 8 and negative 9 is negative 72. Multiplying by 1 is the multiplicative identity, and it doesn't change the values. Okay, and the next we take 4 times y, which was given as negative 9. So we substitute this in, minus 3 times z, which was negative 1. And now we want to cube that. So let's simplify. Let's deal with our exponents first. So this is 4 times negative 9 minus 3 times. Now in this case, we can go, we're just going 3 times. So a negative 1 times a negative 1 was positive 1, times another negative 1 was negative 1. Now we can do the multiplication or division. 4 times negative 9 was equal to negative 36. Negative 3 times negative 3 times negative 1 becomes positive, or a plus 3. And then when we do the subtraction, a negative 36 plus 3 is negative 33. Lastly, we'll substitute into some fractions. Okay, so this is equal to, now the negatives here, minus 2 times. Okay, so first we'll substitute in the x. X was given as 2. So negative 2 over y, which is negative 9, and then 2 times y, which is negative 9, and the z is the negative 1. So we need to be careful here because there's a lot of negatives running around. Okay. So first of all, let's simplify the negatives. Here you can think about this as a negative 1 times this. So if you have a negative 1 times, this is negative 2/9, this will become positive 2 over 9. A negative and a negative become positive. Now let's copy the subtraction sign. And let's think about the denominator. This is, well, the numerator is negative 1. Then the denominator is negative 18. In this case, we have a negative divided by a negative, so it becomes positive, 1 over 18. And then we can copy the rest, 2 over 9 minus that. Then we'll multiply by 2 to get a common denominator because we're subtracting. So this is 4 over 18 minus 1 over 18 is equal to 3 over 18. But we always need to check and make sure that we don't have any reducing that can happen. And we do. 3 goes into itself once, and 3 goes into 6 times 3 is 18. So this is the same thing as 1/6. So this one's kind of pretty complicated, so make sure you understand what's happening here with all of the negatives and do it step by step. Don't try and do it in your head because you'll get confused. Many students get confused, and even I get confused if I try and do it all in my head about the negatives. Just do it step by step and make one change for each line, and then I'll be able to follow your work. As always, email me if you have any questions.